Hi friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Mark and I thank you so much for coming by today. The discussion I wanted to have today was started when I actually came across these videos on YouTube where I found people complaining about being told that they were talented and that they were lucky. And I just thought that was really strange and wondered why somebody would take offense to the word talented or being called talented. Because for me, in my experience, whenever someone has come up to me or said to me, "Oh my gosh, you're so talented," I have found that to be a great compliment because it's not a criticism, first of all, so that's a good thing, but also the fact that somebody's taking the time to recognize my skill and recognize my ability and comment on it. So that for me has always been a compliment. When someone has come up to me and said, "Oh my gosh, you're so lucky to have the ability to draw the way you do," I say thank you. That's been always the common response. So I never thought anything of it otherwise until recently. So, here I come across these videos where people are saying, "Don't call me talented. I'm not talented. I have worked hard for these skills that I have." So you're dismissing all the effort and time I put into these skills by calling me talented, by just suggesting that I was born with this and it's just easy for me and that's it. Well, I understand that philosophy after hearing how people describe it and how they are presented with, people calling them talented or saying that they're lucky. I get it. I understand where they're coming from. I don't subscribe to that belief. So if somebody tells me that I'm, like, "Wow, you're so talented," I'm going to still say thank you because to me that's a great compliment. But I at least understand where it comes from. However, one thing that these videos and there's been a couple of blogs I read too, the one thing that they don't really go into detail on is why it's so offensive and what kind of research goes into, why something like that might be considered not a compliment, but really just a dismissal. So that's what I did. I went and I did a little research on my own. I based it on my own experiences, and I even talked to other artists and musicians to see what they thought of this, this pseudo debate about being called talented or somebody saying you're lucky or blessed or fortunate or whatever. So that's what this discussion is going to cover today. In drawing attention to the painting here, this is a drawing that I did a few days ago that I really just did not like. I was bored one afternoon and I was just sitting down to draw something, and so I took a piece of Arches hot press watercolor paper and I drew this, and I was very, very dissatisfied with the drawing when I was finished. It wasn't at all what I set out to do. I was bored, so I kind of rushed it and just thought, hey, I can just draw anything. I can just whip out, a drawing and then I can paint it and it'll be great. But that wasn't the case. I was disappointed because the drawing just looked stiff and generic, and I just wasn't really happy with the subject matter. It's kind of weird looking. But then I had a conversation with Steve over at the Mind of Watercolor and Marty over at Owings Art, and I showed the picture to them, and they both agreed that, don't give up on this. You've got to pursue it and see it through. I was all set to abandon it. I was ready to just put it in my scrap pile, but wasn't sure if I wanted to do anything with it or not. I was just ready to just kind of dismiss it. Their challenge was, see it through. You started this for a reason. Even if you don't like it, you kind of have to see where it will go in order to really appreciate what you just put into it. So that's what I did. I accepted their challenge as far as, seeing it through and seeing what I could do with it. And that's why I'm painting it now. When I started the painting, I really wasn't thrilled. It was more of a chore. But what I found was a great opportunity to, first of all, pull out my M. Graham watercolor paints, get my favorite watercolor brushes, and then indulge myself in the time it takes to paint a painting like this. And what I found was, by the end of the videos, you'll see it too, is that I was fully immersed in this. I was having a blast just painting and coloring this drawing. What it did for me was, it really got me to sit down and practice my skills. And you might look at this and say, "Wow, I think it's a great drawing. It's fine." But for me, it was anything but. I was very, tentative about pursuing it and going forward with it. But I'm really happy that I did, because even though it's not a portfolio piece, it is a drawing that got me to exercise and flex my sort of artistic muscles, if you will. And that is worth more than anything else, because what I should have done at the onset of this picture is I should have done preliminary sketches. I should have done some practices or warm-up drawings first before I just decided to sit down with a piece of watercolor paper that's expensive and do a drawing that in the end I just wasn't happy with. So eventually I get through this, and you'll see at the end of the video that the drawing comes out just fine. But again, for me it's more of just an example and a study and practice and exercise that sharpens my skills more than if I had just abandoned it. So let's get into the discussion right after this coffee break. So in talking about those videos that I've watched on YouTube where, people are questioning the word talented and so forth, you have to take into account levels of talent and levels of skill. And in my experience, what I've found, and again, these are just my opinions, so, take it with a grain of salt, but what I've found is that there are 3 groups of people that exist in the creative world that succeed. And it doesn't just have to be in art. It can be music, it can be athletics, it can even be in math or science. But these 3 groups of people are, the first one is the inherited or naturals, the second one are skilled or learned persons, and the third are the determined or persistents. And I'll explain each one as we go. The inherited or naturals, that's the first one. These are people that are born with some kind of genetically predisposed ability that is just so ridiculously, good that at a young age people can do amazing things, create masterpieces, write compositions, or mess around with numbers. You take Pablo Picasso, who was considered a master of art at 14, or you take Marie Curie, who was reading French and Russian at the age of 4 and went on to win 2 Nobel Prizes. And Mozart was creating compositions at the age of 5. That is so rare, and those people, I've never met somebody like that in my life, and I'm guessing maybe you haven't either. These are the wunderkind, these are the child geniuses or the prodigies that you hear about and movies are made about. But like I said, I've never met one. I don't know anybody that's been born with this incredible ability. These are the talented people. So when you say, wow, you're so talented, that's what you want to, compare yourself against, is somebody who was born with a natural, accelerated level of talent and skill in a particular field. Now, the second group, these are the skilled or learned persons. This is the category that this is where I fall into. And I'm guessing it probably is where most of us fall into too. These are the people that, we credit our success in a field based on the hard work and the years of effort we put in to crafting our skills and refining our skills. I look at this drawing that I'm doing, and, I use these watercolor paints and these colored pencils, and I've been using these for years, but I'm still learning how to use them. It's funny because no matter how many years you put in of effort, there's always more to learn. I might watch a video by somebody and see something that I never even thought to do before. So I'm always picking up new ideas and refining my skills to a higher level. But it takes a lot of effort for me. So these are people, the skilled and learned persons, are people who are born with kind of a rudimentary or basic inherited natural skill. And through education, through, practice and consistent development, you get better and better and better. But it takes years. It takes years to refine these skills. Like I said, we credit our work, not based on the talent that we have, but on the dedication and the hard work we put into learning these skills. It's a commitment to ability, that's all. And you enmesh that with a passionate desire to excel in your field, whether it's for fame or wealth or just personal satisfaction, doesn't matter. It's that credit of hard work that oversees, is that a real word, oversees? That oversteps, just raw talent. Now, the third group is the determined or persistence. These are people that they're born with nothing. They are born with no skill in a particular field whatsoever, but yet they have this really passionate desire to excel at a field that is not something that comes natural to them. I have a friend of mine who spent years in the banking industry, and he just had this passion for photography and wanted to get better at it. So for him, the best way to do it was he could take classes, he could do this or that, which is what a lot of people do. But for him, his secret was to go out and get a camera and just start shooting pictures like crazy. And that's what he does. And his work has just gone from, you know, the basic level of understanding to really appreciating photography and having, you know, he developed an eye for photography, which I think is just amazing. So, you know, those are the different groups of people. And most times you'll find that somebody might pick up a guitar who's never played and has no musical ability, and they'll start taking classes and playing the guitar, but it's too much. It's too much of a chore, so they give up, and they quit, and they abandon it. And like this picture, I don't think it's worth abandoning. I think it's worth pursuing, because you'd never know what's going to come out of that if you give up. So, you know, in that sense, I'm looking at this picture now and I see, you know, there's so much more to this now, detail-wise, color-wise, and just the practice that I'm putting into it beyond the original drawing that I started with. And for that, I am so grateful to have, you know, been challenged to pursue it. So, you know, when it comes to words like talent or, you know, being blessed and all these things, these are words. They're words that are commonly used by people to sort of measure out the skill level of someone else compared to themselves. I do it all the time, and I know you probably do too. You know, we use words like amazing or brilliant, or, you know, that is so special. And, you know, it's like you don't really think about the words you're putting into it, but those words actually do have an impact. I know if you're a financial manager might look at a fine artist and say, wow, it's amazing that you can paint like that. Meanwhile, the painter is looking at the financial manager saying, wow, it's amazing you can create wealth, you know, from just looking at numbers and moving things around. But that's with complementary intention. And complementary intention is, it's one of those things when you see an athlete perform at a level that's just, you know, higher than the average athlete. You might say, you know, amazing, and that seems appropriate in the sense that the feat they accomplished left us amazed in comparison to the level we're at, where, you know, I couldn't jump, you know, over one of those high jumps or whatever. So to me, somebody who can is amazing. Telling an artist that they are so talented because their ability exceeds the average abilities of other artists, it seems acceptable in recognizing their skill. But again, it's just measurements in comparing levels of success from one person to another, or to ourselves, or to a group. What these complementary intentions do, however, is not factor in, you know, when you're measuring against others, the amount of work that one person put into their skills versus another. And again, that reflects back to what I said earlier. So there's a negative effect of complementary intentions. Being told that the results of your work or your performance are based on being lucky or blessed or fortunate, they don't count those hours and hours and hours, years that were spent developing those skills. And, you know, being talented assumes that the years spent immersed in all these rigorous exercises and committing to being good at something are nothing more than something you were just born with. So I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense here. I'm kind of talking fast through it. But, you know, if you're being told that the work you do is brilliant, well, that can be kind of a negative thing too. Like, wow, your work is brilliant, man. Well, that kind of overemphasizes the reality of how good the work actually is. It might just be average. It might be good. It might even be a great piece. But brilliant? That's a tough word, because, you know, that's usually reserved for something that is so far above everything else that nothing really can compare to it. Brilliant. I say it a lot because I use it in a different kind of context. I say, wow, that idea you had was brilliant. Okay, well, it's just a word. It's complimenting somebody, and it's telling them, you know, what they've done or that idea was actually really good, but I'm just sort of exaggerating it a little bit. So there's a difference between, you know, the negative effect versus just an exaggerated effect. But, you know, there are compliments, there's criticism, and then there's the objective and subjective responses. So compliments are basically, the best compliments just come in the simple forms of statements like, I thoroughly enjoyed your story, or your art inspires me to paint, or wow, you played a really good game tonight. Those are basic statements that are just, your flat average compliment, and anyone can take those and walk away with those feeling good. But if you really examine what the best possible responses to those comments are, they're nothing more than thank you, oh, I'm happy to hear that, or that's kind of you to say. In contrast, being told, you're so talented, that could evoke an inner dialogue, that the person worked hard for their skills and that they weren't born with them. The same thing with being told you're lucky. It's suggesting that hard work and dedication had nothing to do with it, and all it was luck. So, wow, you're lucky you can run that fast. It's like, no, it's not luck, it's hard work and skill. So some people don't understand that, and I've just become aware of this myself, so I'm starting to understand it a little better too. Now, with criticism, this is tough. Some people consider it acceptable to go beyond a simple compliment and provide their own personal criticism. And it can be tricky because sometimes even the criticism, it might reveal unseen truths to the artist or the musician that can enlighten them or be of benefit. So you got to be careful, because if you criticize someone, it can also cause them embarrassment or even rejection. There is a term called the unwelcomed criticism or unwarranted criticism. And that's when, no one wants to hear, hey, you played a great game tonight, but, there's some things you need to improve on. That's where objective responses come in. And that's a basic response that recognizes someone's work. Your song was easy to dance to, or your watercolor painting is really well done. They evoke the common response of thank you. A subjective response, however, is designed to provoke further dialogue in a basic compliment. You could say to somebody who just wrote a sad story, like, hey, your story was really sad, but what did you base it on? And those responses can sometimes get them to talk about their work more. And I have a quote that I used to use when I was a teacher, and that is, ending a sentence with a period closes the door to discussion, yet ending with a question mark opens the door to endless possibilities. And I still stand by that. So I know I've been talking a lot about this stuff, so I hope I haven't lost you on this, but it's one of those things that, are you talented or are you skilled? That's the question. Did you work hard for what you accomplish in your artwork or your music or your writing or your athletics or whatever? Or did it just come natural to you from birth? Are you just one of those gifted people who was born with this incredible skill? Well, that's not for me to decide, that's for you to decide. But I think I know the answer, and that most of us kind of fall into that skilled or learned persons category. And, it takes us a lot longer to figure things out through trial and error, through experimenting, and through practice. Practice. That's one of those things I've been talking about in most of my videos and even in the classrooms. You've got to keep practicing. I recently gave a lecture to a group of high school students, and that was one of the things that I touched on was, if you want to get good at something, you have to keep doing it over and over. We are not lucky enough to have been born an inherited or a natural. We are not fortunate or blessed enough to just have these abilities that we don't even have to practice at. We can just do them. Some people do, and I'm not disputing that. But for me, and I'm guessing most of people watching this, we have to work really hard for what we do. And that goes with any job or any career or anything you get into. Anyhow, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope this was insightful and maybe thought-provoking in some way for you. And if you have any comments or thoughts, please feel free to leave a comment below, and I'd love to have that conversation with you. Keep practicing, keep drawing, keep working at your skill, because the more you practice, the better you get. And as you look at this illustration here, you can see, it was worth the time for me to go back into, and I'm grateful for both Steve and Marty's feedback on this, because they got me to finish this drawing. I had no desire to finish it in the beginning. I was ready to just dismiss it. Once again, I'm glad I did this, and I'm glad I took the time to make the video about it. And again, I hope this was helpful in some way. And if you you like the music, go over to noisetrade.com where I offer this music for free. So thank you so much for watching, and God bless.